This video is to help you with the first 6 weeks review. The way, like our other reviews, that I'd like you to work with this video is to do as many of the review problems as you can on your own, and then come to the video to check your work and get help on the ones that you didn't quite understand. So on this one, I've got two things I'm going to have to distribute. I'm going to have to distribute the -4, which will go to the first set of parentheses. And I've also got a negative next to my second set of parentheses, so that's the same as a -1 that I'm going to distribute there. Notice my 7x is not going to be distributed to anyone. So once I get everyone distributed, then I'm going to box up my like terms and combine them. So -20 plus 7x is -13x plus 15x is 2x, and +4 -12 is -8. So the answer is C. Okay, on number 2. If you've got a calculator, I highly recommend putting into the stat edit. And so your steps, I'll write them over here, would be stat, edit, and you would put your L1 and your L2, and then you'd have to do it again, stat, calculate, and you would do 4, which is the linear regression. So that would be the way I would do it if I had a calculator. If you're sitting at home, don't have a calculator, we can do it by hand just as well. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do with you right now. So what we need to do is figure out what our y is changing by, and then we'll figure out what our x is changing by. So -19 to -7, it's increasing by 12. -7 to +29, this time we're going up by 36, and then 29 to 45, we're going up by 16. So initially you kind of look at it and go, something seems to be wrong. But remember, this is a division of our change in y divided by our change in x. So let's look at what our change in x is. So we have -5 to -2, which is +3. We have -2 to +7, that's +9. And we have 7 to 11, that's +4. So let's look at this. Our change in y over our change in x. So our change in y on this first one is 12, and the change in x is 3. On our second one, we got 36 for our change in y over 9, and our third time we have 16 over 4. When I reduce these down, they all reduce down to 4. So we know that our rate of change equals 4. Well, at this point, I can look at each of my question choices, and I can see that this has a rate of change of 3. So both A and B have a rate of change of 3. And our rate of change for C is -1. None of those match. So by process of elimination, without even figuring out my starting point, I've got a pretty good idea that my answer is going to be D. But I do want to plug it in and just verify that what I've chosen is correct. So I'm going to take this piece of data right down here, the last one, 11 and 45, and I'm going to plug them in and see if they work. So I've got 4, and instead of x, I'm just using this equation right here. Instead of x, I'm going to plug in my x from the table. So I'm going to plug in 11. So 4 times 11 plus 1. So 4 times 11 is 44 plus 1. That equals 45. So if I look, that's exactly what my piece of data right there said. If I use 11 in this equation, it's going to give me an output of 45. so we know it's correct. Okay, again, this is like we've had on our other test. They've given us an ordered pair. It's just a x comma y. And they've told us our value of y. Our value of y is 2.1. So we're just going to plug that in for y and solve for x. So when I plug in 2.1 for y and I solve down, eventually I come up with x equals negative 3.6. Okay, so on this one, just like number one, we're going to simplify our expression. First thing we have to do is distribute. Again, remember our Halloween example. The only thing that we're distributing is what is exactly next to the parentheses, which happens to be negative 2. This 8 down here, that's that neighbor down the street. He's not being multiplied by our parentheses, therefore there's no distribution happening there. So we got negative 2 times 4x and negative 2 times 1. So let's go ahead and bring our 8 down because he's not doing anything. And then we do negative 2 times 4x is negative 8x. And negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. And then we bring down the minus 13x. So now that we have everything distributed, I can go about combining my like terms. So I'm going to go ahead and box up my 2x terms, including the sign in front of them. And I've got negative 8x minus 13x. So I've got negative 21x. And then I've got to circle my numbers. So positive 8, negative 2. 8 minus 2 is positive 6. So my answer is A. Okay, so anytime we have a problem where they ask about a rectangle or a triangle or a circle, if they give us a shape, best first starting point is to go ahead and to draw it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw my rectangle, and I'm going to write down what they've told me. They've told me that it's x plus 7 by 2x minus 2. So those are my two dimensions. And it wants to know what the perimeter is. Well, if you can remember, the perimeter is just asking for all 4 sides of my rectangle added up. So I'm going to go ahead and say x plus 7, that's one of the sides, plus 2x minus 2, that's the second side, plus x plus 7, that's my third side, plus 2x minus 2. And then I can go ahead and start combining my like terms. I have a positive x, a positive 2x, positive x, and positive 2x. That equals 6x. And I also have a positive 7, a negative 2. That'll be 5. And another positive 7 and negative 2. So 5 plus 5 is 10. So my answer is 6x plus 10. So this problem is going to give us practice in actually translating a situation into an algebraic expression. So we're going to start with what it gave us. It gave us that Mr. Bell paid $1,900 for a stove. So he paid $1,900. We're trying to find out how much it's costing to own that stove over however many years he operates it. The other thing that we've been given, other than the starting amount that he bought it for, is that he spends $38 per year. Remember how we talk about per? Per means multiply. So in addition to the $1,900, he also spends $38 per year. Since per means multiply, and we've been told n is our years, per year. and that's going to be our total cost. So we just look and see. Be careful on here. Make sure that if it's a plus 38, when you wrote it down, that you circle the one that's plus 38 in. And that's our answer. Okay, you probably have already seen this, but instead of using a C, in which C represents the number of family members, we're actually using an N. And this is just a minimum maximum problem. We're going to work it twice to get the smallest amount of the bill and the largest amount of the bill and see which answer falls between it. As we know, our bill has to be between $270 and $390. A is the only one that's in that range. Okay, for number 8, we actually have a situation in which they've given us the equation. What we have to do is see how many months that we can actually rent a TV based on the fact that we have $375. So that's the total amount of money we can spend. And we know that we're doing 25x plus 10 is our equation. So our goal is to solve for x. So first thing I'm going to do is just turn it around. 25x plus 10 equals 375. And since I'm solving for x, I know that I have to zero out the other terms. I'm going to zero out my 10. I'm going to do the same thing on both sides. And I've got 25x equals 365. So when I divide both sides by 25, my answer is 14.6. But the question is, what's the maximum number of months? Well, you either do it for a month or you don't. So we can't make it for 15 months. We don't have that much money. So 14 is our answer. So again, this is another one where we're going to practice writing our equation. So we know that this technician earns $350 per week. So he earns that much. We're just talking about 1 week here. So we're just going to do, he earns $350 plus he earns a commission. His commission is 1/10. So let's go ahead and put plus 1/10. 1/10 of what? Well, 1/10 of his total sales. We don't know what his total sales are, so we're just going to call that X. Because when we say 1/10 of, we're saying multiply 1/10 times his total sales of X. So this is our equation. So now we just look, and we look for 350. It's not going X. Sometimes people want to put 350X. But if you look, X is his total sales. So it's not 350 times his total sales. It's $350 for that week plus 1/10 of his total sales. So the answer is B. Okay, so remember on correlation, we have positive correlation, negative correlation, and no correlation. Those are our 3 choices. Positive. It's a happy relationship. They're going the same direction. They're either walking up together or they're walking down together. But it's positive. They're going the same direction. Negative. They're unhappy with each other. Right now they're going opposite directions. Or no correlation. Those are our 3 choices. So first we're going to do is we're just going to look at what the data is doing. So if we look at the X, we're going from -4 to -1 to 2 to 5. So they're getting bigger. Now let's look at the Y. We're starting at negative and also getting bigger. So both pieces of my data are going the same direction. If they're walking together the same direction, they're a positive correlation. Okay, this is one of our error analysis. Just what do we do next? Easiest way to approach one of these is go ahead and think about what would you do next. So the first thing that I would do is I would take my 3 and get it distributed. So let's go ahead and do that. 3 times 7x is 21x. And 3 times 3 is plus 9. And then we still have plus 2 equals negative 37. So then I just look. This is what I've come up with as the next step. And if I look correctly, C agrees with me. So as long as I've done it correctly and I find my answer, everything's fine. For some reason, checkpoints, district tests, the STAR test all love the Fahrenheit to Celsius conversion because it's a scary looking equation. But we know how to work with this. We just have to plug in. We've been told the 95F. So we've been told what our F is. It's going to be 95 equals 9/5 C plus 32. Okay, so let's just start with, we're solving for the C. So I have to get rid of the other term. So I'm going to minus 32 on both sides. And that leaves me with 63 equals 9/5 Celsius. Okay, if I have my calculator, when it's beside, I'm going to divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by 9/5. And when I divide both sides by 9/5, I come up with 35 degrees Celsius. Okay, so the more people that you have in the pool, the warmer the temperature of the pool is going to be. So it's a positive correlation. First thing we're going to do is simplify by distributing the -5 to the first set and the -3 to the second set. Then I'm going to combine my like terms. And so my answer is B. So just like we had earlier, this is an ordered pair, x comma y. They've given us the value for x, which is 3. So we're just going to plug it into the equation and get our answer. Okay, so after I plug in 3 for x and I solve it all the way down, I come up with y equals -1. For this one, the best way to proceed is to use the stat edit and stat calculate on your calculator. If not, then go ahead and find the rate of change and take it from there. Okay, so my change in my y was 9 and my change in my x was 3. So my total rate of change is 3. Then I needed to get where x was 0. So all I did was I just started here where x was still positive and I made me a table, just an xy table. And then I started working my rate of change backwards. So changing my x by 1, I had to change my y by 3, going backwards. So I subtracted 3. And then I did it again. I subtracted 1 on the x and subtracted another 3 and came with my starting point of 0, 1. So 1 is my starting point. So the answer is 3x plus 1. 17 is very straightforward. Just remember, when you're distributing a -4, negative times negative will be positive. Once everything is distributed, now I'm going to box and combine my two like terms. 8 plus 15 is 23, so my answer is D. The biggest thing to remember on this is that we have to get all of our x's to one side. So think about the playground bully and the rules of the playground. Once I move my 2x, and I move it by zeroing out the -2x with a positive 2x, then I'm left with 4 minus x equals 8. So now I'm solving for x. First thing I'm going to do is zero out my other term because I'm solving for x. So I end up with -x equals 4. But I'm not solving for -x, I'm solving for positive x. So I'm going to have to divide out my coefficient of -1 on both sides. Negative divided by negative turns my x positive and turns my 4 into -4. The answer is A. Okay, so when we're looking at a scatter plot and we're trying to figure out the way the trend is, most of the time you can look at them like this one. We can pretty much see that it goes at an upward trend. But we can go ahead and draw a trend line just to verify that that's kind of where our data is going, and it's a positive trend. So the vocabulary I want you to do on your own, either look them up on the website or wherever it is, give it a shot, make sure that you've done it on your own first, and then come here and check for the answers. Okay, so these are the answers on the vocabulary. Just make sure you understand all these terms as you will be seeing it on the 6 weeks exam.